So good morning to everyone in the Philippines. Good Friday evening to everyone visiting us from the US. And thank you to all of you attending this evening, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you're calling in from. We appreciate you all being here. My name is Tricia Luther. I'm one of the directors for Phoenicia Foundation. I help with a lot of the logistics when we go to the Philippines. On behalf of everyone with Phoenicia Foundation, we sincerely miss seeing you in person, but we thank you so much for joining us for our live streaming events. For those of you that are joining us on Facebook Live as well as on Zoom. I would first like to give the pleasure of introducing a couple of people. Lisa Valerio is our founder, who you just saw. She's maxed up calling from San Francisco, California. And she is alongside with Lisa Valerio, with Lonnie Hessen, who is our co-founder, as well as Eric Elliott, who is our educational psychologist and director as well. So thank you all for being here with us from San Francisco. They will be helping to monitor the chat on Facebook. So feel free, if you have any questions on the live Facebook, you can enter questions into chat. I will be monitoring the chat on Zoom today. So if you have any questions for our special guest, by all means, please do so. It is a great honor. I'm going to provide an introduction for Dr. Jennie Trocchio, who I had the honor of meeting through an organization that I work with here in Florida. We're both based here in South Florida. So just a brief introduction of Jennie's amazing background. Jennie Trocchio is an autism director, DRI FlOORTIME provider, and consultant with extensive experience supporting, evaluating, and creating programs for individuals with autism spectrum disorders. In 2008, she launched Florida's first developmentally based school, where roles included Director of Education and President of the Board. In 2014, Jennie founded Autism Education and Development Solutions, now Dr. Jennie.co, and I will put her address in the chat here shortly. To address and meet the needs in the local autism community. Through her private practice, she has had the opportunity to partner with individual families and schools, train over 3,000 parents and professionals across the country in developmental approaches, and created meaningful social opportunities for individuals with autism and their families. In 2020, Dr. Jennie joined the team at Positive Development as the Director of Training and Community Relations. More information can be found at her website, which I will post into the chat now. Everyone, please provide a warm welcome along with me to welcome Dr. Jennie Trocchio.
Thank you so much for that amazing introduction, and it's such an honor to be here. I love just watching the chat and all of the amazing places. We have so many from the Philippines, we have a bunch from South Florida, from California, so this is incredible. I'm so honored to be here. And I'm gonna go ahead and start to share my screen. We're gonna dive right in. We have a lot of hopefully amazing information to get through today. Here we go, pulling it up. Okay, so as was described, today we're going to talk about the DIR FlOORTIME approach to autism. And some of the goals of our time together, we're going to review what we know about autism. We're going to explore what it means to use a developmental approach to autism. Oops, sorry about that. We're going to talk about what are individual differences and how to support them. We're going to talk about the power of relationships, FlOORTIME interactions, take-home tips, and really my goal is to provide everyone an overview of the approach to empower you to get started tomorrow. So let's take just a brief moment and think about autism. What do we know? So we know that autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So something's happening in the brain and development's going off course. We know that so many of our kids are so much smarter than we give them credit for. We know that it's a disorder of integration. So often kiddos know what they want to say or know what they want to do, but they just can't say it or they just can't do it. A lot of kids have difficulty in relating and communicating, differences in processing the sensory environments. So imagine the lights are too bright, the sounds are too loud. Oops, sorry. And so what does all of this mean? And this is my unofficial equation for autism, but anxiety 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And that might sound a little extreme, but I think if you imagine yourself with all of this going on every second, that's what it would feel like, is so much anxiety. So I think it's important just to start off any conversation about how we can help by putting ourselves in the child's shoes and thinking about what are they thinking and feeling in their bodies and minds before we go in and try to help anyone or fix anything. So why should we use a developmental approach for autism? So as we just mentioned, since autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder and something's going off course when it comes to development, then we want to use that same approach to get it back on course. It puts into practice everything we know about autism, about the brain, about development. It has over 50 years of research showing results and a growing body of evidence. And really, essentially what we're doing is we want to go to the source for a lasting change and focus on building really strong developmental foundations to set the stage for higher learning instead of just working on isolated skills and behaviors. And behaviors are really important actually because they give us clues about what's going on, but that shouldn't be our goal. And if you think about it, especially for a child who has limited verbal communication skills or doesn't have full control of their body, really behaviors are often their only tool to let us know what they're thinking and feeling and wanting and needing. So we think of behaviors as something that's actually really important. So they're letting us know what's going on, but again, that can't be our goal. Some of the goals of a developmental approach, we want kids to be well regulated. We want them to have healthy relationships, to have good self-esteem and a positive experience, to have strong sense of self and to be able to function independently. We want kids to be in touch with their emotions, to be independent thinkers and problem solvers, and to be prepared socially, emotionally, behaviorally, in every way for less restrictive environments. And if you look at this list, isn't this sort of what we want for all kids? And I think that's sort of the point, is that when we think developmentally and we work developmentally, we don't need to have a different set of goals. We want those same goals for those same outcomes. So the approach DIR FlOORTIME was founded by Dr. Stanley Greenspan and Serena Wieder. And I think it's super interesting to think about their initial sort of task. They were working for George Washington University, and their job was to think about what are those developmental steps that all kids, all humans naturally go through. So they're working on these steps and they identified the steps for development, but then they said, but wait a second, it's not just this linear process. You don't just go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. It also depends on what this child, this individual child is thinking and feeling and how they're taking in the world. So then they added in individual differences. And then they said, but wait a second, it's not that simple either. It also depends on what relationships a child is engaging with. You know, is this a child who's coming home at the end of a day and just sitting by themselves, or are they actually engaging with another person in rich, fun, back and forth interactions? So they really identified these as the main pieces that help support development. And initially they didn't think of this as an autism intervention, at all. They thought, okay, these are just what we need to consider to improve development. But then as they're developing it and the autism numbers are increasing, they looked and they said, wait a second, this is exactly what these kids need. So that's sort of the way it all got started. And then FlOORTIME are the therapeutic interactions that foster development. And we're going to talk through all these pieces today. So when it comes to development, as we said, intervention is based on typical development. So they're the same basic capacities that all humans gradually master. The 9 core functional, emotional, developmental levels. Today, we're going to focus on the first 6. And really the goal is building strong developmental foundations for relating, communicating, and thinking. And we want to support each child to move up that developmental ladder. So here's sort of a visual of the developmental ladder. And we think about it as a ladder because, well, first and foremost, you always got to start at the bottom and work your way up. And also, if you look at this image of this child on the ladder, you know, we're never just in one level at a time. This child has his feet down here and his arms are up here. So we're always sort of operating within a range when it comes to development. But at the same time, our goal isn't just to see how high we can climb up. we want to make sure that we have a really strong foundation first so that we can build that house, so that we can build all those other skills and capacities onto that strong foundation. So we're going to look at the levels really fast. So level 1, the foundation for development and really everything else, is the ability to attend and be regulated and interested in the world around you. So at this level, we're calm, alert, and able to take in and process information from our environment. Oops. So then at level 2, here, the child's not just calm and alert in their body, but they're actually engaged with you. They're engaged with another person. And this level we also refer to as the gleam in the eye. And we do that because it sounds a little abstract, but you know it when you got it, right? When a child is actually engaged in everything you're saying and doing, that's when we know learning's happening. Once the child's calm, regulated, they're engaged, level 3, we go into intentional two-way communication. So here we're thinking about circles of communication back and forth. So a child's able to initiate and also respond. And I want to emphasize that two-way communication does not have to include language. It certainly can, but it can also be a gesture. So if I were to say, "Ooh, what's that?" and then the child looks too, there we just had a circle. I initiated, the child responded. So we want to think about how many back and forths we can get going. And then once we're there, we move on to level 4. So this is two-way purposeful problem-solving interactions and the development of complex sense of self. So here, the child begins to be a problem solver. They start to have their own ideas. Their feelings get more organized. And as they have their own ideas and start to solve their own problems, they start to feel really good about themselves. That's where that sense of self comes in. And that makes them want to keep trying it more and more to see what else they can do. So that sort of accentuates the growth up. And then we go on to level 5, representational capacity and elaboration of symbolic thinking. So here the child's able to create mental representations. So if you say, "I'm going to grandma's," they can imagine what grandma looks like. They can imagine what the trip to grandma's might look like. And this is also the level where the child starts to be able to share emotional intentions. So they might be able to say "mad" when they're feeling mad. And that's really important because they're able to understand those feelings that come up. And then we move on to level 6, where we're building bridges between ideas and emotional thinking. So here the child's able to connect internal states with emotional ideas. So here at this level, the child's not just able to say, "I'm mad." They're able to say, "I'm mad because it's raining outside and I can't go play." So they're able to explain why they're feeling a certain way. And I know that that was sort of a lot of information that came at you, but let's explore a little bit. So we're going to watch a quick video, and I want you, as we're watching, to think about what levels we see and what strategies are being used to get there. So just to give you a little sort of background information, the kiddo we're about to see actually starts at level 0. So he is not able to attend, he's not regulated in his body and mind, and he was having a really hard time in a classroom setting. So he wasn't getting anything out of the lesson, he was disrupting everyone around him. So they went outside into the hallway for some one-on-one time. And so let's take a look and see what we see. As we're watching this video, I do want to mention that there's a woman holding the camera who's talking. And I know it's hard, but if you can sort of try to filter her out a little bit. And let's take a look.
I want to catch that. There, that's a face I want. 1, go. 1, 2, 3. Go, go, go. Go, 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 go. Go, go, go. Go, 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 go. Good Lord, Jen. Look at that. Good looking. Do it again. Go, 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 go. That's the face I want to get. Happy. Go, go, go. Say 2 more. More. Go, 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 go. his own before you did? That's it. Because I'm right at his face.
All right, so in that video, I'm curious, and I can't see the chat, but I'm wondering what levels we saw here. So we know that the child started at level 0, so really was not able to share attention, was not regulated in his body. Do we think he was able to get there? Did he seem to get to a place where he was calm and alert? And I don't know, Trisha, can you see the chat? Okay, so I think he was able to get to that place of calm, alert, and he was able to be calm in his body and share attention with the woman who was holding him. What about level 2? Was he able to actually engage with her? Yep, agreed, definitely.
Yes, we're getting yeses. Yes,
oh.
Yes, yep.
Perfect, beautiful, thank you so much. What about level 3? Were they able to have a back and forth communication?
Yes, 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 yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so, and it wasn't with words, right? You know, the woman with the camera kind of kept saying, say more, say more. And clearly the child was sort of like, that's too much right now. But he was saying more in his own way, right? So they would bounce and then he would look at her, or they would wait, and then he'd look at her and then she'd bounce again. And then he'd look at her and then she'd bounce again. So they sort of started their own little back and forth communication. What about level 4? Do we think he got to the problem solving?
Yes, we have a yes from Jesusa. Maybe he's responding, maybe.
I think that is actually the exact right answer. So at the end, the child was, you know, the woman would wait to bounce him, and then he started bouncing harder and harder, right? And so it was either, and this is where it's helpful to know the child, but it could have been really, really intentional communication, or he could have been problem solving. Shoot, the bouncing stopped. I wanted to keep going. Maybe she forgot what we were doing. Let me give her a reminder, which would be problem solving. So I think you're right that it's definitely top of 3, maybe into 4 a little bit to know for sure. We would have to know the child. But absolutely. And what do we think about level 5? Was he elaborating on ideas, symbolic thinking?
No, maybe, not yet. No, not yet.
You guys are right on. So didn't get to level 5, didn't get to level 6, but in that short interaction, they were able to go from level 0 to high level 3 into level 4. So I'm just curious, what strategies did we see that helped them get there? Anyone spot anything?
We have a maybe, but he's smiling and happy. Developmental. Engagement, prompting, associating the more and bouncing, developmental, eye contact, facial expressions. Beautiful. Interaction, but I guess based on the response of the child, sensory integration also, joint attention, his expressions.
Awesome, beautiful. So I think we really nailed some of the key pieces there. And I think a huge one is that the woman holding him was so engaged with him, right? And when someone's that engaged in what you're doing, it makes you want to engage that intentionally back, right? And I think the fun factor there was huge as well. It was fun. The child was enjoying himself, which made him want to be part of the interaction, and it made him want to be there. And there could also be a nice sensory piece, right? Where when that child is held, he's able to feel his body a little bit more. And maybe the bouncing helps him to regulate. And her facial expressions, I love that someone mentioned that. I think those were huge. And the woman holding him kind of used that as almost prompting, right? So she would wait, and then that was his cue to, yes, let's keep going. So it was sort of this beautiful back and forth. Awesome. See, so that was a lot of information, but we were already getting at these levels. All right, so then we're gonna move on to the I, to individual differences. And I think here's just a little political cartoon to set the stage for it, where there's a little assessment man, and he says, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. And you can see the monkeys looking happy, like, I got this. The penguins looking a little stressed. The elephant's like, what? And the fish just doesn't have a chance. And I think this quote at the bottom, it's an Albert Einstein quote that I think is just perfect. Everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And I think that's so unfortunately true, because every single person has so many gifts and so many valuable characteristics, but we can't all be judged the same way. So when it comes to individual differences, here we're thinking about how does each child take in and process the world around them. And I think this is a real beautiful part of this approach that makes it so rich. So here we're thinking about the child's sensory system. We're looking at their motor system, the visual spatial processing, language and auditory systems, the child's personality, the passions, the learning style. So we want to look at all of this and what makes this child them, and how are they taking in the world around them, and then how can we support them in that? So this profile determines how we experience the world, interact with others, and learn. And this is probably one of my favorite quotes. If you've met one child on the autism spectrum, you've met one child on the autism spectrum, because they're all so different and all in their own ways. And it's based on all of these different characteristics. So we're not going to go in depth on all of them, because we do only have 45 minutes and I don't want to just, spew out a whole bunch of information that we won't remember, but we are going to touch on the sensory system, the motor system, and passions. So to do that, we're going to start off with another video. So this is a video by Carly Fleshman, and she is an amazing young woman on the autism spectrum. She is nonverbal, but she does type to communicate. And so this is a video that she created to teach others what it's like to be her. And she is a young woman who actually now has published a number of books, but she finds that people don't often understand her experience. So again, we're going to take a moment and sort of put ourselves in her shoes and see how she experiences. This is just a regular afternoon out for coffee with her dad and her sister. So as we're watching this, I just want you to think about, how is she experiencing the world around her?
I can't wait for a coffee. Oh, hello, barista.
What do you girls want?
Skim soy latte. Taryn, soy can't be skim.
Hot chocolate, orange juice.
No, Dad, I want a coffee. Hot chocolate? Great.
So I was thinking of going to Sarah's later. Could you give me a ride?
Yeah, sure. Are you cool with taking your sister?
Yeah.
Wait, what? I have my own plan.
Okay, I'll see you tonight, okay?
How can I help?
I'm just going to fast forward a little here. Go ahead and stop it there. All right, so I'm curious, what did people see in that video? What did we learn about the way Carly's experiencing the world around her?
Too much sensations felt. Everything is overwhelming for her, chaotic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. You could tell every sound she was in tune with, right? She was very aware of all of the visuals in her environment.
High sensory, everything's magnified. She's very hyper aware of things and people, sensory overwhelmingness. They have own feelings too.
Beautiful, beautiful, absolutely. And I think that I love that someone pointed out that she's very aware of everything around her, because so often there's almost a judgment that individuals on the spectrum aren't aware of their surroundings. And I think she intentionally included that to show that, no, I'm aware of when you stare at me and when you stare at me and when you stare at me. And the feelings part is huge because she's so smart, and you could tell that she didn't want to go with her sister. She didn't want to do that. Well, and I just said she's so smart. What do you guys think? Is she? Did we see signs of cognitive intelligence?
Yes, very smart. She's very smart. Yes, 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 yes. Someone mentioned earlier toward the end, it was like she wanted to speak out, but it was hard for her to do so.
Absolutely, yes. So she's clearly very intelligent, and we know that because we got this insight into what she's thinking, and that's so amazing. And I always wish that I had that with every child I was working with. But it's incredible that we got to really get walked through her experience. And the communication is huge, right? Because she knows exactly what she wants. She's sitting down, she wants a coffee. And if we just imagine ourselves in her shoes, you know, let's say it's morning, we are ready for a coffee, right? We're in a coffee shop, we smell coffee, everyone around us has coffee. And then, you know, we get the prompt, do you want orange juice or hot chocolate? I think we can all imagine how we as adults would feel with those two options. And she just sort of wanted to scream, I want coffee.
One person said Dad really tried to give controlled choices, but they still weren't the options that she wanted. And another one said the most important is that she can communicate.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and you really feel for the dad in this video, don't you? Because he's trying so hard, and he does. He gives choices, and he's trying to give her a voice, and he's trying to honor what she wants. But it's not what she wants, and just how frustrating that mismatch becomes for both of them, right? And there's that point towards the end where you could tell she's getting a little out of control in her body, and things sort of start to go blurry, and she's reaching, right, for a cup of coffee, which is ultimately what she wants. And Dad takes it from her and says, how can I help? And I just think that's such a heartbreaking moment because he's trying so hard and she's trying so hard. But I just think it gives such insight into her experience. So awesome comments. Thank you, guys. So let's take a moment and just think about the sensory systems. So there's, you know, the 5 basic sensory systems that we all know and love: visual, auditory, olfactory or smell, gustatory or taste, tactile or touch. But then there's also additional senses that a lot of people don't necessarily know about or think about. But we have the vestibular system, which is our sense of balance, a child's ability to process and interpret where they're located in space. We also have the proprioceptive system, body awareness. So a child's ability to process and interpret where they are through their muscles and joints. And we see a lot of kids, if they're seeking vestibular input, so kids who really love to spin or swing or go up high, and then there are kids who absolutely don't, right? And for proprioceptive, if we think about how we get that information into our muscles and joints, you know, things like walking, movement, deep, deep, deep pressure. And then there's also a new recently discussed set of sensations related to internal organs, and this is interoception. So this is knowing when we're hungry, when we're thirsty, when our heart's racing and we need to take a moment, when we need to use the restroom. So we really want to think about where the child is in terms of all of their sensory systems, excuse me. And again, I know that that's a lot of information. So this is sort of an easier way to think about it. So there's our typical processing system. So most of us neurotypical adults, we take in the world around us in a pretty even way. You know, we see sights, we hear sounds, we can tune them in or out as we want. But for a lot of kids on the spectrum, they have uneven processing systems. So they might see every single visual in their environment, or they might hear every single sound, even if it's far away, even if we can't hear it. But maybe they can't feel their bodies. When I found that out, it was like a huge moment. A lot of our kids cannot feel where they are in space, and just imagining what that feels like. So we really want to think about how each child is experiencing all of these different sensations, and that'll let us know how we can help support them through our interactions. So at a sort of simplistic level, we just want to be aware of how each child is reacting to sensations. So we can think about what sensations enhance engagement, what sensations help the child to be engaged with me in this moment, and let's incorporate those a little bit more into learning activities. We can also think about what sensations are causing the child to disengage, and maybe we pair those, with more preferred sensations. Maybe we minimize them at first until we have that trusting relationship. We can also prepare the child and make adaptations. But really, we need to attend to the child's subtle cues. And a lot of our kids can be so subtle. I had a child once who, and actually there's a picture of him here. So we used to do a whole bunch of activities where we're painting feet or painting hands. And I always thought he loved it because he would sit there and he'd sort of smile. But then one day I was videotaping it and he did this tongue out. And it was so fast that in the moment I didn't see it. But when I was watching the video, I thought, what does that mean? And he did it several times after I painted his foot. And I realized that that meant he didn't like it. And the next day after I had this sort of realization, I brought in a whole bunch of items that I knew he liked and I knew he didn't like. And I would take out something he didn't like and he would do it, he did it again. And I thought, oh my gosh, you're telling me you don't like this. And he looked at me like, hello, how long was that going to take you to connect? But it's these little things. So when we really start picking up on the very subtle cues and clues that our kids are giving us, we can start to think about, okay, how can we support this child to be more calm in their body and to be able to take in the world around them? And then we can adapt our interactions to the child's profile to really help them succeed. So also just going back to the beginning, what is autism? We know that autism is a disorder of integration. So learning and development requires the whole body, mind, body, and emotion. But the number one question here is, but what if your body doesn't work? And that is actually one of the number one things a lot of our kids are telling us, especially kids who have a hard time communicating their wants and needs. And that's actually how Carly started off that video, right? She said, I'm in a body that doesn't work right, and how frustrating that must be. So what we're learning, what the research is telling us, that a lot of our kids have disruptions in the sensory motor system, meaning they have the ideas, they have the intent, but then there's a breakdown between the actions and communication. So if we think about the Carly video, for example, she had the idea, she knew what she wanted, right? She wanted that coffee. There was no doubt about what she wanted, but we saw the immediate breakdown between the actions and communication. She couldn't just grab it. She couldn't just say, I want a coffee. So just to imagine, again, that this is what so many of our kids are experiencing. But I think it's really important to make note that our kids have the ideas, they have the intent. And a lot of individuals on the spectrum are so smart, even gifted, but this motor planning piece really inhibits their ability to show us what they know. So that's why we often need to dig a little bit deeper. And here's just a couple of references, resources that are created by individuals on the spectrum who are sort of shouting this message. I might not be able to have a full verbal conversation with you, but I can write a book, I can create a documentary. So here's Carly's voice. This is one example. This is by Carly Fleshman, who we saw in the video. This is another book that I love. I highly recommend it, The Reason I Jump, by Naoki Higashida. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But it's a wonderful book written by a 13-year-old. At the time he was 13, but it's just a wonderful window into his life and experience. And this is Wretches and Jabbers, which is a documentary by two older gentlemen who were nonverbal for the majority of their lives. And then they learned how to communicate. And then they went on a world tour to find other people around the world who communicate the way they do. So just food for thought there. And now just touching on the importance of talents and passions. So a lot of kids on the spectrum might be fixated on a certain thing. And we want to think about how can we use this strong motivation and broaden it out. For example, if a child likes trains, if you think about it, let's use trains to target their goals, because if they're already motivated and they're already engaged when we have out the trains, then let's do it. You know, we can read about trains, we can add the trains, we can talk about the trains, we can find the trains, we can be trains. I mean, you know, trains can go up, they can go down. There's really nothing you can't do, you can't not target with a train. So we want to take what the child loves and use that motivation and expand it. And I also think it's important to note that social interaction will develop through these shared interests. When it comes to targeting individual differences, we really want a team approach to make sure that we're able to generalize across settings. And that really just means that we want every person who's working with this child on the same team and on the same page and using the same strategies to help get progress going and to really understand what's going on with each child. All right, so now the R, relationships. Okay, so why are relationships important, right? Well, they're critical to us being who we are. So relationships help us to feel safe. And it's only when we feel safe that we're able to think, when we're able to express our ideas, right? If we think about, you know, if the first person who typed a message in the chat, if someone responded, well, that's stupid, well, then you would feel unsafe and you'd think, well, I'm never typing in a chat again, right? Because someone has just made you feel unsafe. We would never want to do that, because when we feel safe, that's when we can open up. Relationships help us to feel smart, to have that positive sense of self, that feeling of I can do this or I did this. That's how we learn to trust. That's how we learn to get motivated. And if we want kids to think, they have to want to be there. They have to be comfortable and they have to feel good about themselves. And so here's back to the research. So insights of the critical features that support development from relationships. First and foremost, we have to be responsive. So if a child does something, we need to respond to it. And it doesn't always have to be with language. It can be with our facial expressions. It could be a or mm-mm. We want to be able to connect with them emotionally. It should be regulating. So if a child's really upset or angry, we want to think about how can we calm them down? So how can we co-regulate with them for a moment? We want to be engaged. And I think we touched on that earlier. When someone's engaged with us, it helps us to engage with them. It should be pleasurable, warm, reciprocal. It should be back and forth. It shouldn't be just a one-way dialogue. No one really responds to that. Although this webinar is kind of a one-way dialogue, but we're interacting, right? We're still finding ways. It should feel secure. You shouldn't feel like the other person's going to leave you. And relationships support the child's ability to regulate, communicate, and think. And as adults, for us to be supportive in that relationship, we really need to make sure that we have our mask on first. And I know there's a little image here of the flight attendant, but you know, she always says, in case of emergency, put your mask on first and then the child's. And that's critical because if you're not okay, you can't help the child. So we want to make sure that we're able to be calm and regulated in our bodies so we can help then support the child. Okay, also believing in and presuming competence. So the greatest gift you can give a child is to believe in them. I won't read this whole quote for time, but I think it's worth noting. And here's another quote that I love. My teacher thought I was smarter than I was, so I was. And I think so many of us can relate to that, where someone else can believe in us so much and it helps us to reach those expectations that they have. And it makes us feel really good about ourselves. And so sort of the glue that ties all of this together are emotions and affect. So emotions lead our mental team. Before we do anything, we think, okay, do I want to do this or not? And if we don't want to do it, then we'll find a way out of it, right? And just thinking about how we feel about doing something if we're emotionally shut down versus when we're feeling joyful. And if you just take a second to think, what do you remember from last weekend? I know it was a long time ago now, but usually what you remember are the things that you had that emotional connection with. And that's really what grounds all learning. There has to be that emotional connection. And then there's affect, and affect is our facial expressions, our tone of voice, our gestures to help express some sort of emotion. So, you know, it could be, I don't know, or it could be, that was surprising. But affect literally ties it all together and gives our experiences meaning. And so often we see after a big experience, kids will kind of look at us like, what was that? How should I feel? And if we scream, they'll scream. Or if we say, it's okay, we're all right, we've got this, then they mirror that same affect. So affect helps us to engage, convey feelings, prompt and redirect. It's central to all learning and it's free. So affect, using our facial expressions, tone of voice, it's the most powerful tool we have. So again, let's use it as often as we can, right? Okay, so how does this all tie together? And I'm gonna go through some of the wording of this a little bit quickly because I want us to watch some more videos. And I definitely want time for Q&A at the end. So we know we wanna meet the child where they are developmentally. We wanna think about their individual profile, build on their interests, and keep that relationship central. So how do we work on this? Floor time. So what is floor time? It's often thought of as play with a purpose. Intervention is child-led, adult-facilitated, and that gives us a window into the child's world, into what they're doing, thinking, feeling. It's play-based and fun because nothing activates the brain like play. When we're playing, we're communicating, we're motor planning, we're problem solving, we're doing all of this great stuff and working on all of these skills, but in a way that's fun that we want to keep doing it. And respectful, we respect each child as a valued and capable person. And this leads to greater mastery of social, emotional, intellectual capacities. All right, so how do we begin this? Here are sort of the main components of floor time. First, we wait, then we join, we build, and then we reflect. So let's go through that a little bit. So first we wait. We check ourselves, make sure we're regulated. We sort of go in with a bit of a Zen head. So no ideas or intentions of our own, just with the intention of following the child. We observe, we put ourselves in the child's shoes. And when we take this time to wait, watch, and wonder, it helps us know the best way to engage with the child in this moment. So taking this time to wait, watch, and wonder first is really critical. And then we get to join. So we join them in what they're doing right now. We don't try to take over. We get in there on their level, in their little visual box so they can see us. We think about how we can get in sync. Less words, more affect in the beginning. And we want to use the toy however the child wants to use them, maybe even being the toy ourselves. We can be silly, we can be dramatic, but we want to build on what the child's doing. And then we want to create that back and forth flow of interaction. And sometimes you sort of got to sweat a little bit to get it going, but you can do it. All right, and then we want to find the joy. So catching those moments of joy and connection. All right, and I'm gonna just skip through some of those slides so we can watch another video. I hope that we have time and we'll still end. If we go till 9:50 and then have 10 minutes of questions, I'm hoping that that's okay. So here's a video about a dad who sort of had this pivotal moment of maybe I shouldn't be directing the play. Maybe I should just join my child. So let's take a moment and see his experience and just think about what comes up for us.
Now he was responding, but he was responding to drills. And I wanted a deeper connection. And then I had this pivotal experience where it was just a regular night. I was putting him down. I had given him a bath. I put him in his crib. And as soon as I put him in his crib, he started walking back and forth in his crib, following the line at the edge of his crib. And I just had this overwhelming moment of wanting to connect with him. So I called to him. I was standing at the doorway about to turn off the light. And I just said, "Hey, buddy, it's Dad, look at me." And he didn't pay any attention to me. But I crossed the room and I climbed into his crib. He stopped what he was doing and he looked at me, and after a beat, he just started to giggle. And it made me giggle, and I giggled, and we had this wonderful moment of building a relationship. I remember thinking, this is my way in. I just got eye contact. I didn't have to do any tough love or strict thing. Like, this worked. Like, this was therapeutic, and connected with him in a way that I just thought had to be good for him in his brain development. It had to be good for our relationship. It had to be good therapy.
And then Dad does his research and realizes that what he's doing is good for his son's development. It is good therapy. And there's a reason behind all of that. So if we look at it, did we notice that Dad just started by observing what his child was interested in, just by taking that moment to wait? Did we notice all that?
One person mentions it's just a matter of patience, love, and affections. Another person says yes.
Beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yes, couldn't agree more. Love it. Love it. And that moment to think, okay, what is my child interested in? And then dad went in with that Zen head, just wanting to connect with his son. He didn't have any plans of his own, right? He didn't say, first I'll go into the crib, then we'll count the number of planks on the side, right? That would have killed the whole interaction. It would have been a bust. But then the novelty made it fun. Like, how cool, dad's in the crib with me. This is amazing, right? And then dad was able to create those back and forth circles. Did we notice how dad was able to create those circles?
And one person says sort of a functional analysis. Someone says yes.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yes, yeah, by allowing a child-directed play.
Beautiful, absolutely. Yeah, dad took that second and he's in the crib and he put that blanket on his head, right? And then he just waited. And then the child's like, wait, this is cool. Took it right off, right? And dad was able to say, ah, and they had this moment, this beautiful connection. And then dad put it on his head again. And so it was a peekaboo, but it was absolutely back and forth. And you could just sort of watch those circles flow. And I don't know, what do you think? Was dad able to get the gleam in the eye there? Was he able to engage with his child?
Yes. The relationship and connection was just amazing. Definitely. Yes. Definitely. Absolutely. Definitely.
Love it. Perfect. And that's another example of, the child sort of at level 0, pacing back and forth. And then dad was able to get all the way up. He was regulated. In that video, the son was able to engage. They had those back and forth circles flowing. So they got all the way up to level 3. All right, so once we wait, we join, then we get to build on the interaction. So we get to build on wherever they are, let's build up. We want to think about that just right challenge and then add in little steps and complexity. How can we advance the child's agenda? We can up the drama, the urgency, the affect, and build in independence and problem-solving skills. All right, so now we're going to watch one more quick video. So this video is called Bear Farts. And this video is based on, so there was a coach with the family and she sort of gave a family homework. And she said, okay, the next time I come, I want you to think about some game where you can keep an interaction going for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And the family was like, no, we can't do that. That's too hard. And so she came back the next day and they said, well, we have a game called Bear Farts. So why don't we take a look at what the game is and how they build it up.
Wait. You ready? You ready? Are you ready? Are you ready for Bear Fart? Bear Fart, ready? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do we call it? What do we call it? What do you want to do again? Perfect. Tell Anna. What do we call it? Bear fart. Come here, Kate. Come. One more time. Come here. Oh my God. Come here. Well, this is what we've been playing. Come here. And so, ready? Here we go.
And so this is a great game. So now what I want you to do is wait for him to request it and then say, okay, where do we go? And see if he'll do it. He's getting a drink. We'll see if he initiates it.
All right, and just it takes a while for him to initiate it. But if we notice from the first half of that interaction, the child is loving it, right? He's calm, he's engaged. And now let's see if they can up it a little bit.
Wait for it. I'm going to prompt him. I can't wait anymore. All right. Hey, Keegan. Keegan, you want to do bear fart?
Where do we go for bear fart? Where do we go? Take me where we go. Where do we start? Where do we start? Okay. Uh-huh.
And so this is what I want, just to add extra steps. If he's motivated to do something, make him work for it. And, you know, so then, and just stand there until he initiates. There you go.
You ready for bear fart?
Perfect.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Again, bear fart again. That was fun. I want bear fart. Where do we go? Take me. Take me.
And just, you know, every step of the way, make him initiate with you again about it. Yeah, I love this. I love it. Yeah.
Good.
And you can do a little playful obstruction where he goes, again, bear fart. You go, no bear fart. And he goes, bear fart, bear fart. You go, no, okay, fine, I'll do it, you know.
What do you want to do? What do you want to do? I don't know. I don't think so. No.
Perfect.
What do you want to do? Bear fart. I don't know. I'm not sure. Are you sure that's what you really want to do? Are you sure that's what you really want to do? Yeah? Positive? Let's count. 1.
And wait for him to say 3.
3.
There you go. Poor dad. He's already told me he was so tired.
Oh, shame on me.
No, it's
Bear fart.
And it also gives you a break if you're like, I don't want to do the bear fart.
All right, well, go ahead and stop it there. And I'm curious to see what reactions there are to that video and what ways they were able to step it up.
We have quite a few reactions, Dr. Jennie. So we have love this man, dad making question made child respond verbally. In doing the bear farts, it helps the child communicate to his parents and father. And he loved doing it again. He's very happy. Interesting webinar. True. He becomes more playful and active, gradual buildup of steps. That's amazing for both of them. Wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah, and we saw in the beginning when dad was sort of leading the play a little more, the boy was liking it, but it was really dad leading. And, you know, it took a while for the child to initiate again. But then the more the child took the lead, the more engaged he was and the more he was willing to work for it. So I'm glad everyone loved that video. I love it. And just the way they work on communication and motor skills and movement and all of it. And the final step is we always want to take a moment to reflect. Think what went well, what didn't go as planned, what are we hopeful about, what should we focus on next time? And videotaping is a huge help here because so often in video, we can pick up on so much that we didn't notice in real life. Some of the principles for success, we want to have fun with people, do what the child loves. We want to put in the time. So they say 2 hours a day, ideally, but really these 15 to 20-minute interactions throughout a day, and it can be during bath time, during feeding time. We want to understand the child's profile and play at the right level. Some take-home tips, and this is just a little summary. We want to be present, tape the interactions, wait, join, build, reflect, follow the child's lead, and remembering that experimenting is okay. There's no right or wrong. Sometimes we can learn so much more when things don't go as planned. And we want to practice. We want to have that time to just engage with our kids. Here's a cool, amazing free resource I want to point out. So this is the Perfectum Parent Toolbox, and they have an entire 16 different segments on their website. And each of these segments has a video, has a printout. It's an amazing resource. And again, totally free. You just need to create an account. Some resources and keep in touch. Here are some DIR resources. If you want to find me, here I am. The new organization I'm working with, Positive Development, has a webinar on March 11th, if anyone's interested. And the new organization has four different locations, 2 in California, 1 in Florida, 1 in New Jersey. If you want to keep in touch with them, please do. They share so much. And I just want to do a deep from the bottom of my heart, thank you to everyone for being here for this opportunity. And I would love some questions. I know we went a few minutes longer than initially discussed. I hope that's okay, but I would love any questions.
I know a couple of attendees have raised hands and we have about 230. So if you could just pop your question into chat, I would be able to find you much quicker. I know someone at the beginning asked if we were going to cover tips for regulation.
Hey, Trish.
Dr. Jennie, I think you did that. Yes, Lisa.
Hi, sorry to interrupt you. We have some questions in the Q&A. I don't know if you can see the Q&A.
Yes, thank
but we've got,
you.
Perfect. That would be great. If you can look at those and
okay, so I have, thanks, Lisa. I have a speech pathologist here in the Philippines. I have this patient who has difficulties with engaging into conversations other than his preferred topic. He also has difficulties in relaying his emotions. He refuses to think and engage when he is uninterested, even if we provide motivations by talking about his favorite topic first. How can we apply the components of FlOORTIME to help him? Thank you.
Wonderful. That was a loaded question. So I'll start, and then if you could help remind me of the other pieces. So,
sure.
So if he just wants to talk about his preferred subject area, initially go with it and then just see how we can use that and slowly broaden it out. So if his preferred topic is trees, for example, then maybe we could talk about, well, what climbs up trees if we want to incorporate animals? Or we could talk about, you know, what makes trees live? So there, we could bring in science, we could bring in so many topics about trees. But if we use his initial motivation and broaden it out from there, it's a lot easier than saying, let's talk about trees for 5 minutes and then we're going to talk about math. But if we think about how we can get the communication going within his preferred topic area. And then there was something about emotions and he's unable to express what he's feeling.
Other than he has difficulty in relaying his emotions.
Gotcha.
Refuses to think in, yeah, we already covered the uninterested.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of kids have that. And actually, if you think about back to the levels, those feelings aren't really organized until level 4. So it is a little bit higher. And to help kids start to understand their emotions, sometimes we can help either label them. So, you know, if a child's really mad, then maybe they don't have that word for that feeling. Sometimes we get so stuck in the feeling of mad or sad, but they can't process what it is. They just feel a big feeling. So we can help label that and say, ugh. And it's helpful if we mirror it with them. So if a child's really mad, maybe we say, ugh, yeah, that made me so mad too, right? It was so, we were playing and then it rained, right? And just when you help share that emotion, you're connecting with them. And when you label it, then you're helping to give them that word. So you're helping to give them mad. And then the more we do that, they'll slowly start to generalize it. But when we pick it up in that moment, when they're feeling that feeling, it'll be that much more meaningful. Because again, everything relates to how we're feeling. So if we can connect the word to the feeling, it would be really helpful. I hope that helped.
Great, thank you. One person asked about the books that you referenced. They asked if they're available on Scribd or where can they find those?
I believe pretty much anywhere. They're very, I know especially The Reason I Jump, it's a worldwide bestseller.
They could just Google them or?
Absolutely, yes. And Carly Fleshman has a number of books, so they should be easy to find.
Great. Another question, they're really engaged and enjoying. Thanks for this webinar. Just want to ask, what can we do if the child doesn't want to stop bear farts and throw tantrums, but the dad is dead tired?
That is a really great question because that happens sometimes, right? And I think that sometimes, you know, especially if you got it going, you have a really great interaction, it can be helpful to either, there's a couple ways to handle it. If there is someone else at the home where you can sort of tag in, tag out, like, okay, I'm done, you're up. That can be really helpful because when the child's motivated to engage, we sort of want to jump on that moment and see how long we can get going. But at the same time, it's also sort of a good opportunity to talk about natural consequences. right? Like, no, I'm for real, I'm exhausted. And it's just like, you know, sometimes they really want to go outside and play, but it's pouring rain, we can't. So sometimes life happens. So it's a good way to like, oh, but I can't. But I would make it really over dramatic. Use the affect of, I'm so tired, and maybe sort of like crumble to the ground. Just so you are really expressing, it's not because, no, I don't want to, it's because I'm exhausted. And then they'll start to understand a little bit more.
Another question, what if a child grew up without assistance from the parents? What will be the result for that?
Grew up without the assistance from the parents. Well, I would hope that the child had relationships with other people in their lives. And so, you know, ideally it's relationships from the parents and caregivers, but I think we all have relationships that we've learned from that weren't our parents. You know, maybe it's a teacher or a best friend, but we learn so much from those around us who care about us and who want us to succeed and who are able to sort of calm us down when we're upset and to make us feel better. So hopefully, even if the child didn't grow up with the parents, hopefully there was someone else in their lives who was able to give that relational support.
I know it's 10 o'clock and I thank everybody for remaining on. We do have more questions. Dr. Jennie, do you mind staying on so we can make sure that we answer them?
Absolutely.
Great. For those of you that need to jump off, we thank you so much for being with us. We can't wait to see you in person again, especially for those of you in the Philippines. Please continue to join us. This session was recorded, so it will be available on Phoenicia Foundation's Facebook page, as well as our YouTube channel and our website. So please feel free to continue to look for that. And I'll go ahead and continue with the questions if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Does the DIR FlOORTIME work for all children across the spectrum?
So every child is different. It's hard to say that one approach works for every child. I will say I have never met a child who didn't benefit from this. And actually, like I've never met a child, typical neurodiverse. I mean, I think that this is sort of the best way to approach humans. But that being said, especially if a child comes from an environment that's very structured, where they're constantly being told what to do. So if you're constantly being, you know, first we do this, now it's time for this, now it's time for that. If you just want to let them take the lead, that can be a little anxiety provoking at first, because they're like, well, wait, you always tell me what to do. What am I supposed to do? I don't know how to be in charge here. So that could take some transition time. But I mean, I think when someone gets on our level, wants to think about how to help us, support us, and have fun interactions, I've never seen progress not happen, but it is hard to say for everyone across the board, this is the best. So I think we have to think about what's going on with that individual child.
Okay, thanks. How would you explain to the parents of your kid the importance of child-initiated play, knowing that they have high expectations for the kid?
That is a really great question. And one of the things, so when we let the child take the lead, that's when we get the window into their world, what they enjoy, what they like to do, how they want to do it. And that's when we can figure out the best way to help support that child. And, you know, a topic I've been really fascinated with recently is the use of play in countries like Finland. And in Finland, for example, they have no structured academics at all until I think 2nd grade. And they have 15-minute increments throughout the day of just unstructured playtime. And the results that they're seeing in Finland, it's astounding. Their test scores are higher. Everything they're doing is so much higher, because when we're playing, what we're doing is it's coordinating everything that's going on in our brain. We're able to communicate, we're able to problem solve, we're able to think outside the box, we're able to move, we're able to work with others, social interactions. It all comes from play. And so even though it seems like it's not a direct correlation, when we have all that going on, when we learn how to think and feel for ourselves, that leads to any skill you can imagine, but you sort of need that foundation there. And if you do like flashcards, for example, then yes, the child might learn to memorize, but you know, memorization sort of out of trend these days. Now we all have Alexas and Siris, and you can Google anything you want. So we really, what's more important than just memorizing facts is how do we think, and play and child-led activities help a child to think. Sorry, that was a long answer, but I hope it answered.
Maribeth asks, what if the parents are in a denial stage to accept their child with autism?
Yes, so that is certainly, that happens a lot. And I think the fact that this approach really works for every child is a way to help support that. And when a family's in denial, I really think about the importance of mental health support and how we can support that family. Because, you know, when a family gets a diagnosis, they do go through the full range of grieving stages. And every single part of that is important, to know how you're feeling, to acknowledge it, to have someone to talk to without, you know, just telling them, well, you're wrong. They need to work through all of those feelings. So I would think about how to help the parents, and then also how to help the child in a way that helps any child. But mental health supports and making sure that family knows that it's okay to feel the way they're feeling, but also guiding them towards resources that will help.
Is there also training of DIR FlOORTIME before being able to use it?
Well, part of my goal today was to give enough tips and tricks, and I hope I didn't talk too fast for everyone to grasp them, but part of the goal is for, you can start today, tomorrow. There are programs that do formal trainings. One of them is the Perfectum organization, and they're at perfectum.org. They have wonderful training programs around the world. There's also ICDL, and they have amazing training programs as well. And then there's actually another one, the Play Project. They provide trainings specifically for the early intervention population. So, so birth to 5. But I encourage everyone to just start trying out some of these strategies tomorrow, see how it feels, see what happens, but there are opportunities for further training.
How can we help a child increase their empathy?
Great question. So if we want the child to be more empathetic, we need to be more empathetic. So showing and modeling for the child what that feels like. So if the child is, did I already use, so let's say the child is really excited, you know, we want to match them there, and oh, you're so excited. And we want them to feel that feeling of, I'm excited, you're excited. And the more we mirror it and the more we share in those emotions, the more they'll connect to what it is. And this is also where our affect really comes into play. So for example, if I were to tell a child, I'm feeling tired today, that won't help them be more empathetic, right? You want to do, again, the dramatic, I'm feeling so tired today. I can't get up. And the more dramatic we help them to feel that feeling, then they'll be able to connect with us that much more.
This is an interesting one. I know someone who is autistic and she finds it hard to connect with new people she's not familiar with, especially that she's having online class. She's not responding well, unlike the way she will talk with her family. She's very shy with unfamiliar people. And when I ask her, why are you not talking? She said she's shy. She knows the answer to the given question during online class, but she's not talking. She's more likely to whisper.
Oh, that's a really heartbreaking situation that so many kiddos are going through right now with so much online school. And I think the solution sort of depends on the individual. So, you know, maybe that child would feel more comfortable turning off her camera, so that way she's not feeling seen and judged, but maybe she could type, or maybe she could tell the answer to someone else and then they're able to respond for her. So I would give her ways to still be successful in class while not making her feel whatever's behind the shy, whether it's embarrassment, whether it's self-consciousness, whatever it is, but give her a way to still be successful without making her feeling out of her comfort zone.
Okay. My daughter was diagnosed with mild autism when she was 2 years old. Now she's 13. She can't help being in a corner, imagining things and making squeaking sounds. She's aware she's doing it, but she doesn't know how to stop it.
So what I would do personally in that situation, if she's in a corner making squeaking sounds, I might try to tiptoe into that corner and make squeaky sounds with her too, and just see what it feels like to make those squeaky sounds. So, you know, is it the feeling in her throat that makes her feel good? Is it the being in the corner, the tightness? And then I would try to see if we could get a back and forth going there. So if she goes, and I go, maybe, and then maybe all of a sudden, oh, that scared my dog. Sorry. So then, you know, maybe we could get a bit of a back and forth going from there and see how we could expand it. But I find that often when you take that time to join them, then we can broaden it out. Because so often kids, it's adult human nature where we see something that's different. We say, you know, no, stop, don't do that. But if we take that moment to join them, usually we'll be able to find a way to broaden it out at least a little bit at a time.
Okay, so it's 10:10 p.m. in Florida, and Jennie has had a long week. If you don't mind, we'll do one more, and then we want to thank everybody for being here. Okay, so I'm also a speech pathologist from the Philippines. I've had several kids that I handle through Telepractice that dropped out because it was difficult to engage them through this modality. I think you just mentioned a little bit of that. Due to limited attention span, limited sitting span, limited interest and compliance, I would like to ask, what are your tips for incorporating DIR FlOORTIME for Telepractice?
That's a really great question. And I want to say that I can really relate to the difficulty, especially with the sitting. Sometimes I have a bunch of kiddos who really benefit from having an adult with them while we're interacting through the computer. And I know not everyone's able to do that, but having someone there who's able to provide the sensory supports that will enable them to stay there can be helpful. There are sensory supports you can think about, like perhaps like a ball chair is helpful for a lot of kids, or having fidgets around, things like that. But I also find that if we're doing anything over a computer, usually your affect, you need to be twice as animated. You need to be twice as engaging as anything else. So in person, you know, you could be there and say, oh, this is fun. But over the computer, it doesn't translate it. You need to make it bigger, like, wow, this is so fun. So I really find that in this modality, we sort of need to go really big, as long as the child can handle it. But then you can also use different things. I found that, you know, YouTube has a number of books you can read. So there's different ways that we can make it engaging, or using the whiteboard. But so that was a couple different tips. I hope at least one of them might be able to help the child you're working with.
So we did have some people that were actually experiencing blackouts, which is very common in the Philippines. And they're asking where they can find the recording. So if you visit our Facebook page, which is, if you just go to Facebook, Phoenicia Foundation, within the next day or so, we will have a couple days, we'll have the recording, because we want to edit out a little bit of the front that we started early. They will be available there. Also, if you go to the YouTube channel and just look up Phoenicia Foundation, it will be there as well. I thank you all so very much. Dr. Jennie Trocchio, we are so honored that we had the opportunity to meet you. And for everyone out there, Jennie and I got acquainted through a friend of mine that I was looking for a mini art project with the children on the spectrum. And once the founder, Lisa Valerio, and I looked at her website, we scheduled a call immediately, and are just so honored of this relationship that we built. So everybody keep in mind, don't be shy to ask for help, and from people that may not even be involved in people on the spectrum or kids with special needs, because you never know how you're going to meet someone. So Dr. Trocchio, we truly, I mean, I couldn't even begin to tell you all of the chats and gratefulness that's coming through from everyone that was on this. So we really appreciate you being here. Lisa, Valerio, our founder, do you have any last minute words that you'd like to say?
I just want to also, extend my thanks and appreciate everybody who's attended this evening. And feel free, please, it's on our Facebook page, this recording, and will also be on our YouTube. Share with other friends. Look, we have a lot of webinars that will be coming up throughout the next, Friday nights, mostly here in the States, which is Saturday morning there. And Lonnie has something also, I think, to add or to say. No? Okay.
Thanks everyone for being with us. We so appreciate you, Jenny, for presenting, and we're looking forward to next week's webinar. So join us on Fridays. Fun.
Morning. Okay. Thanks everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.